Hello friends, we're on the floor today because I can't be bothered to lift that pile of books. It is a tower, it is a monument, it is gigantic, and these are all the recent books I have acquired, mostly for my birthday, and well, I'm gonna talk to you about them. So clearly I can't be trusted because I've already published at least 2, if not 3, book hauls since the beginning of the year, and they were not small book hauls either. And every time I say that I need to be more measured with my book buying because I have this tendency to buy or acquire more books than I'm able to read. And so last year I did a whole low buy book year, which went really well. I was really proud of myself, and then kind of give myself a bit more leeway this year, and I completely ran away with it, and it started to be out of control. But I'm not gonna say that I'm gonna behave better now, because clearly it's not working. I'm not doing it. And also I have something really fun planned for the end of June. I don't know when this is going to be published, but around that time most likely. And that I have a frog outside that's being really loud. I don't know if you can hear well. Now obviously he's quiet now that I'm talking about him. I call him Herbert, and obviously he's going to stop singing when I talk about him, but you might hear him at random times during this video because he's really loud. Anyway, so I have fun plans for the end of June, and those plans I kind of expect will involve some bookshops and probably some book buying. So I'm not gonna make any promises. I'm not gonna make promises I'm not gonna be able to uphold. So yeah, I guess this is the year of book buying. And maybe if I say that, maybe that will kind of turn the tendency around. Well, we'll see. Anyway, I've been babbling at you for way too long. Let's talk about the books. The first 3 books I already own a copy of, or like a version. This is the Fallen Gods trilogy by Hannah Kanner, which is a trilogy I read and loved last year. And because I got a new job and then it was my birthday, I decided to treat myself. As if all of this was not already treating myself. Anyway, I wanted something special, and so I wanted to get special editions of this trilogy because again, I loved it. I know that they were beautiful options, but it was really hard to get my hands on the full trilogy. And so I ended up getting the French translation. They are absolutely stunning. You have beautiful sprayed edges, beautiful end papers, and then the inside is also stunning. Sunbringer, also with the spread edges, the end paper, and the beautiful naked book. And then the third one, Faithbreaker, again, beautiful sprayed edges, beautiful naked cover. I love the purple, and then nice end papers. This is very much purely a shelf trophy for my birthday. This was not necessary, but this makes me really happy. So I guess in that sense, it was necessary. Next, we have Time Shelter by Georgi Gospodinov. This is a book I got during my trip to Paris in May for my birthday. I have been wanting to read this for quite a while, so I was excited to find it secondhand. This is about a clinic of the past, which is supposed to help people with Alzheimer's. And in this clinic, you have different rooms that will perfectly encapsulate different decades. But apparently, beyond the people with Alzheimer's that this clinic is supposed to help, you have random people, healthy people, who still want to visit and spend time in those kind of time capsule rooms. This is translated from Bulgarian by Angela Rodel, and I think the premise sounds really intriguing. I'm always keen to read books with interesting takes on the concept of time. Then we have Chrysalis by Anna Metcalf. This is a book I found in the same bookshop that I also found secondhand, that was also on my radar for a long time. This is the story of a woman who went through some kind of traumatic experience and from there decides to go to the gym, work out, become really strong, and she starts to develop a kind of cult-like following on the internet. But the story is told from 3 different point of views and people who are observing this woman and how she changes. So it's from the perspective of one person from the gym, from her mother, and then from a friend who sees her during that time of trauma. You never get the point of view from that main character, but you see her through those different perspectives. Almost a bit voyeuristic, it feels like, so I'm quite intrigued. It reminds me a little bit in concept of Her Many Faces, which is a thriller where you again see the main character through different perspectives. So I think that could be quite interesting. Nightshade and Oak by Molly O'Neill. I actually have 2 copies of this because Kat from the Cat Bite and Ellen from the Element Book Club had the same idea and treated me for my birthday, so I still need to decide what I'm gonna do with the second copy of this. But I'm really grateful for the gifts and I'm really excited to read this. This is on my TBR for the Reddit Fantasy Bingo, and it's about the goddess of death who is turned human by some kind of wayward spell, and she needs to acclimate to this new condition which she's not suited for and not used to, and she enrolls, I think, a knight to help her return to the underworld and I guess resume her godliness. Next is another secondhand purchase. Those are the last 2 volumes of the Cardcaptor Sakura series. This is a manga I used to read and watch the anime when I was a kid, and I loved it at the time. So in a feat of nostalgia, I decided to purchase back the the whole series. It's only 12 volumes, so it's not that many, and just reread them. And so I've been able to track them secondhand. I got quite a lot of them for very cheap, so it's been a good deal, and I'm happy to report that I now have the complete series. Next, I have a whole bunch of French books. I'm gonna go quickly through them because I'm not sure you're as interested by them as you might be by the other ones. The first one is a very short novel I got from a feminist queer bookshop in Paris. It's about this very famous fairy in France called Mélusine, who is kind of a legendary figure, but apparently she appears again in present time, and she's kind of appalled by how we're treating the world and the state of our environment. And so she's coming back to fight against that. It's quite intriguing. I'm really curious to see how it goes. Next, we have this tiny little non-fiction book, which is an alternative history of maps, kind of looking at from prehistorical times to today how drawing the world and representing the world has changed. And yeah, I think it's going to be super intriguing. If you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I do love maps and I'm fascinated by maps. And so I'm starting to collect a few books on the topic, which is quite exciting. Next, we have a novel. This is The Epidemic by Åsa Eriksdotter. This is translated into French from the Swedish by Marianne Segol-Samois. I think that's how you pronounce it. And let me just read the blurb back because I don't remember the details. Okay, so this is about a fictional prime minister who wants to make Sweden the healthiest country in the world. And so it starts this craze and kind of extremism of people trying to be thin. The premise sounds incredible. I'm not doing it justice, but yeah, I'm so pumped for this. It sounds really cool, really fun. I found this in a wonderful fantasy bookshop in Paris. When I was in Paris in May for my birthday, I went to a bunch of really cool bookshops, like kind of specialized, again, like the feminist queer one, the fantasy one. This one was really amazing. Like the decor and everything wasn't out of the ordinary. Like it looked like just your regular bookshop. but the selection was excellent, and so I got a few books from there. From that same bookshop, I got this little nonfiction book, which is about female friendship as a kind of life goal. You hear sometimes of stories of just like groups of women started like an eco village or something and just like spending their retirement together. That's such an appealing idea. I mean, I do love my husband and I want him to live very long, but the reality is that men typically don't live as old as women. And so I've been having this idea of just like, when I retire, if my husband is no longer with us, which touch wood is not going to happen. Again, I hope he lives very long and I hope he outlives me. But yeah, like spending my retirement with my girlfriends could be a really cool option. Anyway, I'm digressing very much, but this is kind of the idea of this book, or the topic of this book is just like centering female friendships into our lives, and that sounds really exciting. And another French one, which is Talent is a Fiction, is a non-fiction book about how the idea of innate talent might not be true, and kind of trying to deconstruct this conception that we have of talent. I am not entirely sure how much I will agree with what the author says, just because I'm wondering, for example, or especially how neurodivergence will come into play into her vision or her thesis, but it's definitely a topic I'm interested in. So I'm really curious to hear her arguments and maybe change my mind. Okay, I have another one, French, again from that same fantasy bookshop, which was incredible. This is Translate the Future, and it's about the kind of study of translation, or just like trajectology. I don't know if that's a word in English, but it's definitely a word in French, specifically of science fiction. So this sounds very niche, but at the same time very much up my alley, because I love fantasy and science fiction. I used to be a translator. I love the art of translation, and so there is a book that merges those two things, which is mind-boggling to me, but I'm so excited to read this. Back to English books now. We have Representations of the Intellectual by Edward Said. This author is very well known for his book about Orientalism, which I have not read but heard about. This one is about the figure of the intellectual, and it sounds, at least to me, very fancy, very posh, very a bit snob, because that's kind of the connotation that the term intellectual carries, at least in France. And so at the same time, I feel like I do kind of aspire to be an intellectual, but not in that posh snob sense, more in the sense that I just want to live a life that's led by ideas and thinking. I love reading, I love writing, again, I love ideas. So it's very much something that drives me, just using my intellect. So I'm curious to read this book, which I think is a kind of about the responsibility of intellectuals, their role in kind of political questions and things like that. So again, very intriguing topic, something that I'm super curious to read more about. And that's coming from Shakespeare and Company, which is a very famous English bookshop in Paris. I haven't been there in years and years and years. Before it became such a, I don't know, internet sensation, people are queuing outside to visit the bookshop, and you're not allowed to take pictures or film inside anymore. And also the bookshop has changed quite a lot since the years I used to visit it when I lived in Paris. And to be honest, it's not as pretty as it used to be. I was a bit disappointed, but the selection is still very good. So if you're there for the books, which you should be, this is still a very good bookshop. Okay, this is another secondhand find from my trip to Paris. Well, you can see a pattern. I bought a bunch of books when I was in Paris. This was, again, on my radar from many, many years ago. I mean, I don't know when it was published, but it's been a book that I've wanted to read for a while. And I never took the leap of purchasing it, but when I found it secondhand in that bookshop, I decided to get it. And I think the cover is stunning. Ooh, this is another French one, sorry. This is a gift from Caitlin over at Spiel the Reads. She read the English translation of this book. I don't remember what the title is in English, but she loved it so much and she thought I would enjoy it. And I mean, I don't know if I will, but I'm definitely super intrigued by the premise. So at least on that front, she was very right. This is about this couple. They don't have a lot of money and they are getting unemployment and showing up at the unemployment agency in Paris until one day the man in the couple starts just like producing bills, like money bills out of his mouth, and that kind of changes the woman, which suddenly can buy kind of luxury goods and items and is wondering how bad is it that she's actually more concerned about what she can purchase than the health of her partner. I think that's what it's about. It sounds really weird, but it sounds really cool as well, so I'm really intrigued and I hope I love it as much as Caitlin did. At Sea by YM Abdel-Magied. This was on my most anticipated list of... This was on my... Oh god, I can't speak anymore. This was on my list of most anticipated books for 2026. I got it as soon as it was available again in an English bookshop in Paris. And this is the story of a woman who ends up being at the head of an oil rig out at sea, hence the title and the picture on the cover. And there's something weird going on, something ominous, and she's trying to figure out why, while at the same time having to play kind of the political power games that are happening on the platform just because she's a woman, and it's all very complicated. She's really treated like shit, and she has to navigate all that while still trying to do her job. So it's very frustrating, but I think, again, the premise is super exciting. Yesteryear, the book that everybody talks about. This is such a stunning cover. I love it so much. This is a gift from Ellen at the LMB Book Club. This is the story of Natalie, who is a tradwife influencer. And one day she wakes up and it's not her home, but it's her home. It's not her kids, but they look like her kids. It's not her husband, but it might be her husband. It looks like the 1800s. What the hell is going on? This is quite a wild ride, and I'm so happy to have this gorgeous book on my shelves. Thank you, Helen. Another gift. I mean, it was my birthday. This is a birthday book haul, so a lot of those books were gifts, and this one is no exception. This is The 10-Year Affair by Erin Summers. This is another gift from Caitlin at Spiel the Reads, another book that she absolutely loved, and whose premise sounds right up my alley, super intriguing, super cool. This is about those two people who, when they meet, have kind of immediate attraction to each other, but they're both in a long-term relationship and they don't see themselves having an affair. So nothing happens, but over time their lives intertwine more and more and the attraction is still there. And that's when the book apparently divides in two different timeline or paths. On one side, they do have the affair, and on the other side, they don't. And we kind of follow their trajectory in either direction over time. This sounds so cool. I think this sounds so cool. I think the kind of light speculative element is really fun, and I am so curious to see what happens. I have another very pretty batch of books. Those are all gifts from Melanie over at A Dark Corner of the Library. Those were books that she had decided to unhaul from her shelves, and she was kind enough to send them all the way to me and make a very happy reader. So those are pretty much some of the prettiest books that I own, and I'm so excited and so grateful. I've been literally spoiled. The first one is The Incandescent by Emily Tesh. Stunning, stunning book. And it's I think, dark academia fantasy, but this one is interesting because it's from the point of view of the director of the school. I don't remember much more about the pitch, but I know that Jessica over at Jessica's Library Card, is that her channel's name? I think so. I know that she loved it, and so I'm really curious to give it a go. Or Infinite Fates by Laura Stephen. I believe this is a romantasy about a woman who has many, many lives and can remember all of her past lives. And in each of them, she is murdered before her 18th birthday by some kind of demonic creature, but she's also in love with that creature. Again, I love the idea of just like different lives and curious takes on time and alternative paths that our lives could take. So this was a premise that really intrigued me, and again, this is a beautiful, beautiful edition, and I'm really curious to read this. The Night Ends with Fire. Again, another stunning edition. This is a Mulan retelling fantasy novel, and that's all I need to know. I think this had rather mixed reviews, but I know that Bonnie Nicole really liked it, so that gave me hope again, and I really hope I like it, because again, it sounds really good and it's really, really stunning. To Steal a Throne by Gabby Burton. I almost put this one on my list of anticipated reads for 2026. This is a YA fantasy about this girl who basically supports her brother being on the throne. She's kind of in the shadows, playing the political games and making sure that he stays in power. But then there is this other guy that comes into the picture and who wants the throne as well. After a while, she kind of realized that, well, maybe she should get the throne. Maybe she's the one who should be in power, and maybe she shouldn't be in the shadows after all. It sounds fun, and I'm excited to read this as well. This is How High We Go in the Dark by Sekoya Nagamatsu. This is another book that I've had on my radar for a long while, and then found randomly secondhand in one of the Paris bookshops, so I decided to get it. I don't remember the details of what it's about. I think it's about a pandemic, but from what I've heard, it's almost like a collection of short stories, and I believe that you kind of move further away in time from the moment of that pandemic and see kind of the consequences of that. I might be wrong, but that's kind of the vague image that I remember from the pitch. I just knew that I wanted to read it. It sounded really good. I heard good things about it, so yeah, when I found a copy in pristine condition for quite cheap, I couldn't resist. And then the final book is a nonfiction book about maps again. It's titled Why is the North Up? And it's a little book about the different conventions of cartography, so kind of explaining why things are done this way. And I think it sounds quite interesting. This is a book I got at the National Library in Paris because they had an exhibit about maps in like fantasy worlds and kind of fantastical lands and stuff like that. It was quite a cool exhibit, but the library at the bookshop at the library was also really good, had an excellent selection, and because of that exhibition they had a bunch of books about maps, including the other little one that I showed you earlier. So I got those two books about maps, and that's it. That's all I have to say about it. Again, I'm excited to read this, obviously. So those are all the books that I've acquired recently. I haven't even counted. Should I count them? I think it's 26, if I have not miscounted. So I thought this was probably the biggest book haul I ever did, but I'm not actually sure. I think I might have one with 30 books. But anyway, it's probably the highest, at least, because there are quite some chunky books in there. All right, I lied. There's actually more. Because it's been a minute since I filmed that book haul, I've actually acquired a few more books since then, and I also got a new haircut, actually just a couple of days ago. I got 3 new books in June. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I had some fun plans and I knew that would involve getting some books. I actually got to meet Caitlin from Spill the Reads in person during a trip to Paris, and so we visited some bookshops and I got a few books. It was so nice to get to meet her in person. I also got to meet Tishka, one of the highlights of my life. He's such an adorable, sweet little pup. And if you have no idea who I'm talking about, well, you should head over her channel because it's delightful. But back to the books. I got a little non-fiction about bats because I seem to have an interest in niche kind of animals. I love platypi. I never remember what's the plural form, but I also love bats and I think they are really misunderstood animals and I want to learn more about them. So when I saw this book in a bookshop, I knew I had to get it. Then I got The Mark from Frida Isberg. This is a novel I heard about from Ellen, from the Ellen Made Book Club channel. This is an Icelandic novel about a sensitivity assessment that is supposed to measure people's empathy and reveal if they might have antisocial behaviors. There is a referendum coming up about making this test compulsory, mandatory for everyone, and a lot of debate happening. This feels like it leans toward the sci-fi spectrum and it sounds really intriguing and really interesting. So when I heard Ellen talk about this, I immediately was intrigued. And so during my trip in Paris, when I found it in an English bookshop called The Red Wheelbarrow, I was really excited and I got it. It is translated by Larissa Kaiser. My Absolute Darling by Gabrielle Talent. This is a book I had never heard of and I haven't seen on BookTube anywhere. It was kind of a random find, again, in a bookshop in Paris. This is literary fiction leaning on nature writing about a young girl living on the California coast, kind of going around and exploring nature, when at home she has a very kind of sequestered life with a father that seems to be not the best, maybe a bit abusive. It's not really explicit from the blurb, but she is in this difficult relationship and family situation when she meets a young boy and he falls in love with her and kind of adores her, and I think that relationship pushes her to become more of her own and show courage and fight for what she wants and who she is, and she kind of becomes her own hero. And the pitch sounded really, really good. I also saw the second book from this author and it also sounded really interesting, so I was very intrigued to read from them and see if I might like it, but I picked the first book to start with. The next two books I got from my local bookshop because I sold a pile of books that I wanted to unhaul and get rid of, and that gave me a little bit of money to spend in that bookshop in exchange. So I got this French nonfiction about hair and kind of the relationship of women around hair. I think that's a really interesting topic. So it's also pretty short. I'm really excited to dive into this topic and learn more about hair from a sociological point of view. Then I got this tiny book about forests and how the politics around the management of forests and the implication of industry in there leads to high risk of forest fires, which is a very salient topic today as France is literally burning. And so yeah, I'm curious to educate myself a bit more on that topic. And then the final books I got in July is There Be Dragons Here by S.L. Rowland. This is a spontaneous gift from my husband, which I am so grateful for, and that was so really nice, like a lovely little surprise. This is about a kind of retired grandma dwarf who is suddenly confronted with needing to go on a last adventure to honor a sadly deceased old friend's final wishes. I've already started this. I am reading it in August for Dragonathon, which is a month-long readathon all about dragons, and it's really nice so far. I'm really enjoying it. So those are all the books that I've already acquired, that are already with me, but I have 3 more that are underway and will be my purchases for August. Hopefully they will be the only ones. I have ordered a couple of new releases that I was really excited about. The first one is Theodora's Tea Shop by Christine Jones, and the other one is A Snake Among Swans by Hannah Kanner, which I've already talked at length in this blog. This is the first book in her new trilogy. I started reading it as an ARC and my copy is arriving very soon, so I'm excited to actually transition to the physical format because ebooks are just not my thing. So I keep relearning that lesson, but yeah, I'm really excited to get a gorgeous physical copy. And then the last one is Physical Education. I don't remember the author, but I will put the cover on the screen. And this is a book I've been eyeing for quite a while. This is a memoir about a woman just starting to weightlift and how that changed her life, to put it in very cheesy terms. But this is a book, again, I'm very excited to read, and I will be buddy reading that with a friend of mine in September, so that gave me the excuse to finally get it. Hopefully after that, I will not be purchasing books for a little while, but again, I'm just not making any promises. Anyways, enough rambling from me. I hope you enjoy this tour of my recent book purchases and all the gifts I got for my birthday. Again, I was so spoiled. Thank you to everyone who was kind enough to send me books. You're just so kind and so sweet, and yeah, I'm incredibly happy and grateful because yeah, books make me happy. Let me know in the comments if you've read some of those and what you thought. Is there anything in there you think I should prioritize reading? And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.